Welcome to Kevin Deal Photography, where I take you on my journey through photography. On today's episode, we're going to be doing an in-depth review of the 85mm f1.8 lens from 7Artisans. I'm pleased to announce the release of my Capture One and Lightroom presets, Metamorphic Portraits, The Sound of Silver, and Rangefinder. These are all available for purchase at my website. Go to kevindealphotography.com or check out a link in the description below. And now, on to today's episode. The 7Artisans 85mm 1.8 is an autofocus lens for the L mount system. It has an aperture range of f1.8 to f16 and it features a declicked aperture ring. It uses a front filter thread size of 62mm. Its minimum focusing distance is 0.8 meters and it has an angle of view of 28.5 degrees. Its optical design is 11 elements in 7 groups and it has 11 rounded aperture blades. It has an assignable custom function button built in. It has a USB-C port built into the lens for firmware updates. Its dimensions are 2.8 by 3.7 inches or 72 by 96 millimeters. It comes in at a weight of 1 pound or 437 grams, and it comes in at a street price of $299 US. Welcome to today's episode. If you're not familiar with Kevin Deal Photography, we do gear reviews, tips, techniques, and tutorials, and sometimes we dive into film. If any of that sounds appealing to you, click the subscribe button below. For all of you who are back to Kevin Deal Photography, welcome back. And for all of you who are new to Kevin Deal Photography, at the beginning of every episode, I ask for donations to BIG, which is an organization that helps intellectually disabled adults adapt to jobs in the real world. I also want to thank all of you who donate to my super thanks link. With that money, I buy more gear, which I then review on this channel and hopefully help you all with your buying decisions. But to the subject of today's episode. So here it is, the 7Artisans 85mm f1.8. They make this lens for Sony E, Nikon Z, and the one I'm holding right here is made for the Lumix L mount. So if you're not on Lumix, you could still learn a lot about the functionality as well as both optical and build quality of this lens. Speaking of build quality, I can confidently say after holding this in my hands for less than 60 seconds that the build quality is superior to that of my 85mm 1.8 Lumix lens. Now, if you want to see my full review of this 85mm f1.8 from Lumix, check out the card above my shoulder or check out a link in the description below. It reminds me of the solid metallic build quality you might see on a nice Sigma lens. It has both a smooth aperture and focus ring, and it has a programmable button on the side. I'll be putting this lens through its paces throughout this episode. I'll be using it for studio portraiture, environmental portraiture, video, street photography, and more. And since I own the Lumix 85mm f1.8, I think we should begin today's episode doing a shootout between the two lenses. But first, let's talk about the differences between these two lenses on paper, where the Lumix appears to have the advantage. It weighs 355 grams versus the 437 grams of the 7Artisans. I would say the filter size of 67 millimeters is an advantage on the Lumix because all of the other Lumix 1.8 lenses share the same filter size, whereas the 7Artisans is a bit smaller at 62 millimeters, which you could also argue is an advantage for the 7Artisans. The Lumix has weather resistance. The 7Artisans doesn't declare anywhere in either the marketing or documentation in the manual that it has weather resistance of any kind, so I'm just going to assume it doesn't have it. If you're from 7Artisans and you want to clear that up, feel free to chime in the comments below. If you don't use the lens hood, the Lumix is shorter than the 7Artisans. Now let's talk about where the 7Artisans has the advantage over the Lumix. Now, I did just say that the Lumix is shorter without the lens hood, but its lens hood is considerably longer than the 7Artisans. So if you're watching this and you like to roll with the lens hood, the 7Artisan is actually shorter overall. While I did say that the Lumix is a little lighter and plastic, the 7Artisans is made of a more robust metal. The 7Artisans has an aperture ring, and the Lumix surprisingly doesn't. It's kind of a curious omission for a video-first company. Additionally, the 7Artisans has a programmable button on the side, and the Lumix doesn't. Now let's talk about where they're the same. Both lenses have autofocus, neither have image stabilization, they share the same minimum focusing distance of 0.8 meters. And lastly, the Lumix has a street price of $599 US, but I've seen it go as low as $399, and if you watch the promos, sometimes they'll even throw it in for free when you purchase a new camera. This 7Artisans has a street price of $299 US, but I've seen it go on sale for as low as $269 US. All right, so that's the stuff we can talk about on paper. Now let's shoot these guys out in the field and compare both their image and build quality as well as autofocus performance. But I don't want to do that here in Austin. Let's take this guy on an adventure. Let's go to Orlando, Florida.
All right, so I'm here in Orlando, and you might see my glass on my lens get progressively more foggy. My apologies, I don't understand how you photographers exist in Florida, where you transition from your air-conditioned houses and then come out into this crazy humid mess, and then your lenses get all fogged up. So my apologies, but I am recording myself on the 85 1.8 from 7Artisans, just to give you an idea of how it tracks me as I'm standing here and the cars are going by. Maybe it'll do a good job, maybe it won't, we'll see. But I'm here in Orlando, and I'm at a conference, and I'm kind of near Universal. There's some points of interest here we can take pictures of, where I can compare this 7Artisans 85 1.8 to the Lumix 1.8. So let's take some still shots. I'll try to frame them up as close as possible to being the same, and we'll check them out later in the episode to see which one we like better.
Florida's gonna Florida, and it began raining, and this lens is not weather sealed. I took it out in the rain anyway. I took it inside, I wiped it down, it fired right up. So while I don't recommend you intentionally go out looking for rainstorms, if you happen to find yourself in one, as long as you cover it up and get inside fairly quickly, you'll probably be just fine. Another perceived limitation of this lens that was tested is no image stabilization, but as you can see these shots right here, I took handheld shots upwards of a second. That Lumix IBIS came through in the clutch. Unfortunately, Florida didn't cooperate with me with the weather, so I didn't get a lot of opportunities to do a head-to-head comparison, but here's a couple of examples. I don't see significant differences. The 7Artisans is on the left, the Lumix is on the right. It also came through with these video handheld shots that I shot at Infocom. For 85mm, I would say that these are fairly stable shots. I found that whether I was taking stills or shooting video with this lens on my S1R II, it did a fantastic job, but the majority of you aren't here to see how this performs for street and video. The majority of you are probably here for portraiture, so let's go back to Austin and let's shoot some portraiture. Okay, so you saw how well this lens held up to the Lumix 85mm 1.8 when I shot it in Orlando, but the majority of you watching this review, let's be honest, you want to see how this guy does with portraiture. So I'm going to use this 7Artisans here in my studio for a couple of sessions. I'm going to shoot outdoors even though it's like 100 degrees. I'll still see how this guy does out in the outdoors doing environmental portraiture, and I'll still do some comparison files between these two, but so far I'm incredibly impressed with how this 7Artisans is holding up against the more expensive 85 1.8 from Lumix. right, so after testing the 7Artisans 85mm f1.8 lens across a variety of projects, including street photography, portraits, and even a baseball game, I came away pretty darn impressed. Let's start with the very few downsides, and they are definitely very minimal. I really struggled to find cons on this lens, and if you follow this channel, you know I try to find cons, and I almost always find cons in everything. So let's start with the autofocus. It was generally reliable, but I did manage to confuse it a few times when shooting against a white, low contrast parking garage wall. That issue may have also been the camera, so I don't know, but this was the lens that was attached to it, and so it's guilty. And so even though most of the time it worked, that one time it didn't work, and so I have to talk about it on this channel. On smaller bodies like the Lumix S9, the lens can feel slightly front heavy due to its robust metal construction. Outside of that, the only other cons I have are incredibly minor. The lens cap pinches awkwardly when you pinch it with your thumb and index finger, and sometimes it makes it hard to attach and detach. It's awkward. Okay, big deal. The barrel smudges a little bit, so don't be eating McDonald's fries and then handle this barrel, or it will smudge rather easily. And then really the only other thing I can think of is that there is no weather sealing or rubber gasket, and they didn't say there was in the documentation. Still, I found myself caught in a 15-minute downpour, and after drying the lens, it performed flawlessly. While I can't call it weather sealed, it's clearly built well enough to handle some unexpected weather if you act intelligently. The overall construction is a major strength. It feels like a high-end Sigma lens, solid and premium. The clickless aperture ring is smooth and easy to use. A big win for video shooters, especially considering Lumix's native 1.8 lenses surprisingly omit an aperture ring. Kind of a curious decision for a video-first company. The programmable button on the side was pretty useful. I assigned it to control my autofocus area. The focus ring was pretty smooth and easy to control, and the inclusion of a USB-C port on the lens body rather than the lens cap like TT Artisan does makes firmware updates more practical. Autofocus performance, I would say, was comparable to the Lumix 85 1.8. The Lumix really struggled more in backlit situations, and then like I stated earlier, the 7Artisans struggled against low contrast white walls, think of like a parking garage or something like that, and I only got it to trip up once or twice in that kind of situation. Overall, for a lens at this price point, I have to definitely put the autofocus under the pros. Now, let's talk about image quality. This lens really shines when it comes to image quality. It's tack sharp with beautiful bokeh and minimal chromatic aberration. In fact, I struggled to find any area where the Lumix clearly outperformed the 7Artisans in terms of image quality. Don't believe me? Here, let's check out these examples. I was using both 85mm in the studio. I have the 7Artisans on the left and the Lumix S85mm on the right. And I really don't see any sort of difference when it comes to detail in the eyes, the eyebrows, the lips, or any of the details that you see here on the face. Let's move to her torso. Check out the fabric on her shirt. I feel the detail here is comparable. I don't see anything that indicates that one lens is necessarily better than the other. Now let's zoom into her bracelet. When you check out her bracelet, you can actually see some lateral green fringing on her bracelet that I don't see on the 7Artisans file. Now, this may bother you, this may not bother you. I'm just pointing out that it exists. You can determine which one you like with your own eyes, but I actually slightly prefer the 7Artisans on the left. In terms of bokeh, they look pretty darn identical to me. Maybe ever so slight smoothness on the right one, which is the Lumix, but I mean, come on, we are splitting hairs here. That basically looks like the same shot taken with the same lens, but it was actually taken with two different lenses. So I'm gonna give it a tie in terms of bokeh, but hey, it's subjective. Maybe you feel differently than I do. Unless you need all your lenses to match in size or filter thread for gimbal setups, I don't see a compelling reason to choose the Lumix over this 7Artisans lens. At a street price of $299 and often available for less, the 7Artisans delivers equal or better performance than the Lumix, which typically runs $399 to $599 unless it's bundled with a camera. And really the only reason I took that 85mm was because it was bundled with the camera. If you asked me to start from scratch and buy one of the two lenses, I would actually go with the 7Artisans. You're getting a better built lens with more physical controls for significantly less money. I rarely recommend third-party lenses over native lenses, but this is an exception. Just like we've seen with Viltrox on the Fuji system, 7Artisans is proving that third-party lenses can now meet or even sometimes exceed the standards of native glass. In today's photography landscape, that's exciting news. That does it for today's episode. Do you have this 7Artisans 85mm 1.8 lens? Tell me about it in the comments below. Did you try it and not like it? Tell me about that in the comments below. And if you're a fan of this channel, I humbly ask you to click the subscribe button below. And until next time, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.